Welcome to a totally accurate summary of the story of Odin Sphere. Links in the description to jump ahead to different sections, as well as links to the source footage and other info. Like, comment, and share the video. Okay, bye. Prelude. Once upon a time, there was a world called Arion, whose denizens hated historians, so they never wrote down dates and hid their information in random treasure chests strewn about the world. But then I came along, found everything, and guessed less thoroughly documented events, thus making their efforts totally futile. So there's this dominatrix in the nether regions called Odette, who looks like hell with tig old bitties and a spider for a cooch. Anyway, Spider-Woman is bored because video games haven't been invented yet, so she opens a path into the land of Arion, which also doesn't have video games, but does have the souls of the living that she can bring to her BDSM parties. However, she's really picky about who gets to come over to her house, and she also likes others to make the first move, so she doesn't send out invites. Speaking of the land of the living, they started predicting the end of the world, but because they hated historians even back then, they didn't tell people how to stop it or give a precise date as to when it would happen. Fast forward way later, and there's a closeted historian named King Gallon of Titania who knows a lot about the nether regions. But because people hate historians, he can't come out of the classroom, as it were, without people hating him for being a nerd. So he writes a book of Deus Ex Machinas, then gets his people to find all the old prophecies about the Armageddon and promises that he's only going to look at the pictures. Instead, he looks through the info and gets an idea of how the world will end. Meanwhile, a Cyclops named Odin is also a closeted historian, but he doesn't want the hot Valkyries to think that he's a nerd, so he probably spouted some bullshit about giving up his eye for knowledge and hanging himself from a tree or something instead of reading. Anyway, he finds out about the end of the world and decides the best way to survive the apocalypse is to beat up everyone in the world until he's the only one left, and founds the Republican Party. More people then come to Arion on a flying ship that was either from space or part of the map that isn't visible because the people of Arion are xenophobic. Either way, the flying ship people settled down and found the kingdom of objectivists. The king, Valentine, had superpowers, but because he was a good guy, dumped them into the coins that he minted for the kingdom and pretended that everyone would get a share of his powers even though that they wouldn't do shit unless someone was rich enough to literally have all of them. Afterwards, Valentine decides to put the rest of his powers into his crown and writes his own book of Deus Ex Machinas to try to prove that he can do it better. Valentine also brought his daughter Ariel, who Odin thought was even hotter than the chick he was with at the time. However, once they found out that they were both royalty, they decided to keep their sexcapades a secret to avoid paparazzi and backlash for running on a platform of family values. Then, Odin takes the prison inmate approach to running the show and tries to shank a play author dragon named Wagner. The dragon doesn't die, but he's so impressed by Odin's workout routine that he gives him some of his blood as a consolation prize, which basically turns him into Maestro Hulk, which is what he wanted anyway. Back at the Hulk's place in the Republican HQ, he finds a path to the nether region in his backyard, breaks into Spider-Woman's house, and steals some of her crystal meth. Lacking a Walter White of his own to consult, the Hulk tries to get information from the three wise guys that live in Titania, and realizing that he's way too swole and famous, he acts like a hipster so that everyone will ignore him. Over time, King Valentine starts to become more and more of a douche to the other nations, and doesn't have as much time to be a nosy parent to Ariel, so he uses his extensive knowledge about meth to create a lab that would be able to make crystal meth without having to sneak into the nether regions at all, codenamed the Crystallization Cauldron. Valentine hires a dwarf named Brahm to make the Blades of Chaos from God of War, tipped with meth crystals so that his daughter wouldn't have to settle for a rape whistle. As a security measure, Valentine also makes a bling ring thing called MacGuffin so that no one other than him can control the royal meth lab. However, because medieval Tony Stark had been in the lab, he knows how to make meth weapons too, and ended up telling the other dwarves. Eventually, the three wise guys get wise to the Hulk and try to make him tell them what they know by playing good cop, bad cop, and guy who's just happy to be their cop. Unfortunately for them, the Hulk pulls the old fake hostage trick from Blazing Saddles to get them to back off, tricks them into telling him everything they know about meth, and turns them into frogs before escaping. The Hulk now had all the info that he needed to make meth weapons, but not all the materials and skills. So he sent a message to the 420 Blaze Kingdom's ruler Asura, and asked him if he could do the Hulk a solid and borrow some of the super hot fire that he needs, and Asura agrees on the condition that he be allowed to call in a favor. Afterwards, the Hulk gets back and manages to make a sword out of his meth crystals, but it's too small for him, so he decides to make it into an offering to King Gallon so that the Hulk wouldn't have to fight everyone at the same time. Gallon accepts and proceeds to give it to his sons Ed and Ed. Edgar swings it around like an ass and accidentally cuts his dad with the sword. Edgar was already on thin ice for wanting to get down and dirty with a peasant, but Gallon also knew that he was destined to be killed by royalty and freaked out. Edgar then decides to move out of his dad's house, leaving Edmund as the favorite and heir to the throne and only Ed. Tensions flare up like a flu outbreak in an anti-vax community between Hulk's kingdom of Republicans and Valentine's objectivists. Plus, a bunch of people get preggers and have kids, such as the Hulk's queen, who apparently wasn't important enough to name drop her show, Edmund's queen, ditto, the Hulk's mistress Ariel, and Edgar's peasant crush who he married. Speaking of which, Gallon has Edgar hunted down and killed so that Edgar wouldn't kill him later and fulfill the prophecy. However, the hitmen didn't bother with the wife and newborn son, who later was found by hippies that called themselves fairies chilling in a nearby forest whose queen was pulling a Switzerland and trying not to get involved. Since Ariel had kids without a clear baby daddy, Valentine locks her and the kids in a tower until he can contact the medieval equivalent of Maury Povich. Then, either by Valentine starting some shit with Titania, or the Hulk pulling a World War I by dragging Gallon into the conflict, the two nations start trading blows. Speaking of Titania, the three wise guys finally return to normal, but because the Hulk wrecked them so hard, in addition to being nerds, make them laughingstocks and outcasts in Titania's society, but Gallon, being a closeted nerd himself, helps them back on their feet. Though with the alliance between Titania and the Republicans still sound, the three wise guys can't pursue their revenge on the Hulk through Gallon, and bide their time instead. Valentine finally finds a medieval Maury Povich who tells him that the Hulk is the father of Ariel's kids, and Valentine gets so pissed at his daughter's taste in men that he strangles her to death. At this point, Valentine, much like a cat whose litter box has been emptied, has completely lost his shit and starts whipping his grandchildren, mostly his granddaughter Velvet, whenever they piss him off. The Hulk, now super pissed that his mistress was killed before they even got to the kinky sex phase of their relationship, and Valentine, seeing the Hulk as the one truly responsible for the loss of his daughter, gun for each other to the full extent of their abilities, but I guess they had a war on drugs going on too, so neither one of them make any more meth weapons. Valentine has Titania on the ropes, but then Gallon uses his book of Deus Ex Machinas to turn into a Cerberus with bare fists, which totally wreck Valentine's forces because they're allergic to Cerberuses and bears. Unfortunately, so were the Titanians. Edmund lost the magic sword behind the couch cushions, and it ended up taking him a week before he found it and used it to kill his monster dad. Valentine still wants to take out Titania, but Ed tells him that he totes knows how to turn into a Cerberus bear too. Plus, it's springtime, and Valentine has no interest in dealing with pollen and Cerberus bear allergies at the same time, so the two break off their fight, leaving the Hulk and the Republicans to deal with Valentine on their own. With Gallon now dead, the three wise guys are privy to his nerd stash regarding the prophecies, but King Ed, having already seen it, took the book of Deus Ex Machinas and hid it so that the horror of Cerberus bear allergies would never plague the world again. The Republicans are ready to kick the objectivists while they're down, but Valentine sets his mobile meth lab to the up setting before they even get there, which makes the whole kingdom go explode. He turns all the objectivists into furries except for Ariel's kids and kills the king, but when the dust clears, the mighty meth lab is missing, and the hippie queen is fleeing from the ruins, so the Hulk decides to beat up the hippies until they tell them where they hid the meth lab. Afterwards, the furries no longer have a home of their own, but because furries aren't readily accepted in most communities, they decide to live underground instead. The hippie queen wants to stop the Hulk, but the hippie forest is radically segregated. Only other hippies listen to the queen. The dwarves want to use the meth lab, but the hippie queen is like, bruh, did you fuckers not just see what happened to the objectivists? Unfortunately, the idiom about history and people doomed to repeat it hasn't been created yet on account of people hating historians, so they power on the meth lab anyway. The meth lab threatens to destroy the whole forest, but thankfully, because the hippie queen is very familiar with tits, she manages to keep their situation from going tits up. The dwarves were like, we done f***ed up. But surprisingly, the hippie queen is like, bros, chill, we could be cool about this. But some of the dwarves were like, nah, we'd rather be dicks. The Hulk takes advantage of the rift between the communities and bringing the dick dwarves over to Ragnarvel to work on a super weapon on the promise that they could continue to be dicks as Republicans. With the necessary expertise at hand, the Republicans work on a weapon for the Hulk using his stash of meth crystals that he plundered from Spider-Woman's house over the years to create a giant spiked Smurf testicle for him, as well as a spear with a leftover meth crystal for one of his two daughters. Speaking of his daughters, the Hulk stops by the 420 Blaze Kingdom with them, and Asura is like, damn man, your girl is fine! How about I call in that IOU and you set me up with that beauty? And the Hulk is like, sure dude, I'll hook you up, and put an arranged marriage on the back burner. So the Queen is seen as a hero for uniting the races in the hippie force, and everyone is so stoked by the new alliance that there's an orgy and the hippie queen gets preggers. Afterward, the dwarves loyal to the Queen call themselves liberals and show their appreciation for the Queen by making her the world's first gun-based meth weapon, but because they're big on gun control and safety, don't make any more. With the political and literal landscape of the world having changed so drastically, the three wise guys decide to split up to find what they're looking for. Urza stays with King Ed as an advisor, Scully meets with Ariel's twin kids as well as the Republican Army General, and Doorbell cozies up to the hippie queen.
The main story.
Anyway, at the chronological start of the game, Ariel's twin kids have grown up into a stripper named Velvet and a Prince Aladdin cosplayer named Ingwe. The stripper has the hots for King Ed's son, who has grown up into blonde Yuri Lowenthal. Aladdin doesn't like this and also insists that their mom prophesies that both Aladdin and the stripper would be cursed and die. King Valentine apparently having taught them to literally and or proverbially kill the messenger because they assumed that because she predicted it, it also means she wanted it. The stripper then heads to Skyrim Mountain to talk to not a boss-fight dragon Hindle, who tells her that being scared of dying is stupid. The stripper still wants to know about the future, but not a boss-fight dragon was paid by the developers to be cryptic so that there could be gameplay and just tells her to come back later and maybe save the world. Meanwhile, blonde Yuri Lowenthal is pissed that his dad King Ed doesn't think that a homeless stripper princess would make a good queen and leaves. But through the power of cutscene transitions, wakes up in the Nether regions to discover that he's been transformed from blonde Yuri Lowenthal into furry Lowenthal, who, after looking for a light switch, hears a voice that unbeknownst to him is King Gallon in his rotting Cerberus bear form. Dead Dog Dad gives his grandson the meth sword King Ed found behind the couch and tells furry Lowenthal to go home because it's nap time. He goes back to trying to find a light switch, but only finds a skeleton with a crown carrying candles that later turns out to be Zombie Valentine. Furry Lowenthal can't see shit without him, so he decides to travel with him. Zombie Valentine brings Furry Lowenthal to Spider-Woman so that they can ask politely if they could leave, but Spider-Woman's a dom through and through and won't let them leave until Furry Lowenthal retorts by stabbing her. The stripper, having returned from Skyrim Mountain, talks to the wise guy Scully, who tells her that she can learn about the end of the world from Dead Dog Dad in the Nether regions and will take her to him if she gives the wise guy Valentine's copy of the Book of Deus Ex Machina, which she agrees to. But before the stripper can cross paths with her beloved furry Lowenthal, he's captured by the Republicans and taken to the Hulk, who tells him that he'll believe that he's the Prince of Titania if he goes and beats up a gluttonous, licentious, sexist, racist narcissist that's hiding his baldness and is currently the leader of the country's armed forces, totally not Trump. Meanwhile, the hippie queen is lamenting the fact that she has to explain the basics of why things are shitty to a potential leader, but proceeds to let her daughter Ferrari fly off with her most powerful weapon prior to taking part in multiple battles with an enemy nation, and tells her totally not evil cousin to help Ferrari become a good hippie. Far atop Skyrim Mountain, totally not evil hippie cousin's adopted son Gothman is in the middle of killing not a boss fight dragon who tells him that his dad's name was Edgar and that he needs to find a bird. But Gothman hates vague and pretentiously poetic talk, so he stabs not a boss fight dragon in the neck with his new meth sword. Back at the Republicans' HQ, Furry Lowenthal takes totally not Trump's Kafui cup back over to the Hulk, who praises him for beating up his army general along with countless soldiers under his command and lets Furry Lowenthal leave. Deep within the hippie force, totally not evil cousin tells the hippie queen that the sword used by Gothman is the tits, and they should totally make more with the Royal Meth Lab. But the hippie queen doesn't like killing characters in cutscenes rather than gameplay, so she objects on moral grounds. Totally not evil cousin then bitches to the dwarf Tony Stark that the hippie queen is dumb for not wanting lots of cursed meth swords before telling Tony not to tell Gothman that he's royally f***ed. Meanwhile, in the nether regions, the stripper finally catches up to the wise guy Scully, who tells her that he won't help her anymore because the Book of Deus Ex Machina didn't have the furry porn that he was looking for. The stripper briefly recalls that her brother Aladdin really likes furry porn before confronting Dead Dog Dad. Dead Dog Dad gives the stripper his nerd stash of prophecies, but Spider-Woman arrives before she can leave and is pissed because Zombie Valentine escaped when she let Furry Lowenthal out of the nether regions. The stripper fights valiantly, but not even a weapon from God of War can save her from Spider-Woman's forces. Fortunately, the Hulk was plundering some of her meth at the time and manages to bring the stripper safely away. Back in the hippie force, medieval Tony Stark tells Gothman that he's royally f***ed, but totally not evil cousin overhears him and sends him to the nether regions and tells Gothman to go on another mission. Gothman very sneakily blows up a ship, kills a berserker, tons of troops, and a few statues that looked at him funny before reaching Totally Not Trump's office, where he hears Totally Not Trump talking with a foreigner about how he should totally be the leader of the Republicans and that the Hulk is going to attack the hippies really soon. Afterward, however, he spies one of the Hulk's Valkyrie daughters named Anime Girl, who is currently playing dress-up and gets a feather boner for her. Near Furry Town, the stripper finds out from her mentor, Exposition Man, that the meth lab, that's also mentioned in the prophecies, is controlled by Valentine's MacGuffin, so she races off to take it from the hippies. The hippies try to explain that Aladdin gave them the MacGuffin, but the stripper flees with it anyway and gives them the slip. Returning to Furry Town, Aladdin finds out about the stripper's actions and scolds her, but she and Exposition Man just walk away. Aladdin, knowing that the three wise guys are looking for the MacGuffin, devises a plan to throw them off the trail. Back in the hippie forest, using the foreknowledge imparted to them by Gothman, the hippies fight off the Republicans in the attack and mortally wound Anime Girl's sister. Dead sister gives Anime Girl her meth spear so that she can become a playable character, and Anime Girl races back into battle, encountering Gothman in the process. The two fight, but the power of boners is too strong, so Gothman lets Anime Girl go. Meanwhile, Furry Lowenthal makes it back to Titania and discovers a doppelganger talking to his dad Ed about how he's going to break up with the stripper. Furry Lowenthal tries to appeal to King Ed, but when he sees the meth sword, he starts getting Cerberus bear allergy flashbacks and freaks out. Furry Lowenthal instead follows the doppelganger to a nearby forest and stabs him until he reveals that he's actually Aladdin in disguise. Aladdin tells Furry Lowenthal that he doesn't know why he ended up in the nether regions, but it was in fact Aladdin that turned him into a furry using the Book of Deus Ex Machina, that there's no way to become blonde Yuri Lowenthal again, and that the stripper is too shallow to love Furry Lowenthal because she never learned to love someone for who they are rather than what they look like because she never watched the Deadpool movie. Deep within the hippie forest, Totally Not Evil Cousin tries to tell the hippie queen that cursed meth swords are awesome and they should have more. She says no, so he tells Gothman to kill a ton of Republicans during the next battle. Speaking of the Republicans, Anime Girl prepares for the fight, presumably by taking LSD because she hallucinates a ghost bird that tells her that she has daddy issues. Returning to Titania, Furry Lowenthal mopes around in the alleyways until the wise guy Urzer tells him that he should go to Skyrim Mountain to talk to not a boss fight dragon about being a furry. But when he gets there, play author Dragon Wagner is there instead and is suffering from ridiculous mood swings that throw him into a murderous rage all the time and takes out his frustrations on Furry Lowenthal, who proceeds to convince him that he's a nice guy by stabbing him several times with his meth sword. Mood Swings Dragon then tells Furry Lowenthal that the furries have a community and he should ask them how to transform back into blonde Yuri Lowenthal. He does so, and it turns out that the furries are trying a radical new conversion therapy called Getting Rich as F***, because according to legend, if you get all the Objectivist Kingdom's money, you can get anything you want. Not far from Furry Lowenthal, the stripper sees Zombie Valentine and runs to try to shut down the meth lab before it's too late. Furry Lowenthal, learning of her departure, dashes off to help her with the power of boners and magic meth swords. The battle begins, but Gothman is quickly set upon by Spider-Woman's debt collectors, who reveal that Gothman's meth sword was given powers by making a pinky promise with Spider-Woman, and Gothman is forced to fight them off. Elsewhere, Anime Girl fights her way to the Hippie Queen, but she calls on the wise guy Doorbell, who summons the dragon Danger Noodle to fight her instead. The stripper manages to fight off Totally Not Trump, but gets cornered by the hippie princess Ferrari. But Furry Lowenthal manages to catch up and keep the MacGuffin from being returned to its rightful owners. He knocks Ferrari unconscious by stabbing her with his meth sword and tries to return the MacGuffin to the stripper. However, Zombie Valentine has caught up with her and takes the MacGuffin from Furry Lowenthal with a Hadouken. But when he tries to use it again, Furry Lowenthal counters the attack and gets the MacGuffin back. Zombie Valentine hates it when he can't spam the same move over and over and limps away in defeat as Furry Lowenthal gives the stripper the MacGuffin and passes out so that the power of boners doesn't reveal his true identity. With Gothman off fighting the debt collectors, Anime Girl beating up the Danger Noodle, and Ferrari really tired after having been stabbed, the Hippie Queen is forced to face the Hulk alone, who summons his giant spiked Smurf testicle to smite her. Totally Not Evil Cousin runs because he has an ounce of sense, and the Hulk reaches the fabled, secret, and super hidden meth lab sitting completely out in the open in the middle of a desert. But before he can make tons of meth for his troops, the stripper arrives with Valentine's MacGuffin and tells it to say no to drugs. Following the battle, the Hippie Queen decides that she's going to die now, that Ferrari is the new Hippie Queen, says that her real name is a weird way to say winter, and turns into pink face-on confetti. Totally Not Evil Cousin then takes his anger at not being made Hippie King onto Gothman, who takes it like a bitch and pretends that his foster dad isn't evil. Meanwhile in Furry Town, the stripper and Exposition Man are attacked by goblins sent by Zombie Valentine. Exposition Man is hurt, but the stripper is told that she needs to hide the MacGuffin. Aladdin likely takes this opportunity to meet with the three wise guys in Titania and presents them with a fake version of the MacGuffin now that said MacGuffin is in his sister's possession to keep them away from her and wherever she chooses to hide it. But because they believe they now have the real MacGuffin and have no use for him, they turn Aladdin into a frog. Back in the hippie forest, Ferrari's dwarven father figure, Hippie Santa, suspects that Totally Not Evil Cousin is actually evil, so Hippie Santa sends Ferrari to go look for support from the wise guy Doorbell. Totally Not Evil Cousin, however, sends Gothman to get Doorbell to betray Ferrari. Despite Ferrari getting a head start, Gothman being weakened by Spider-Woman's curse, and not being able to fly, Gothman somehow makes it to Doorbell first and convinces him to side with Totally Not Evil Cousin with some persuasive stabbing. At the same time, the stripper goes back to Skyrim Mountain where not a boss fight dragon told her to return, at which point Wagner throws a hissy fit again. After slashing him with the Blades of Chaos long enough for him to listen, the stripper gives Moonswing's dragon the MacGuffin. She then returns to the forest that Anime Girl ends up journeying to in the hopes that capturing the stripper will cure her daddy issues. In another part of the same forest, Ferrari finally manages to reach Doorbell's digs. However, because she's a total pansy, she drops her meth gun when a talking frog appears. She agrees to help him if he retrieves her piece, which he does just in time for Doorbell to summon his Danger Noodle to attack her. Ferrari fends off the Danger Noodle and prepares to face Totally Not Evil Cousin with Talking Frog following behind her. Meanwhile, Anime Girl faces off against the stripper who tells her that her dad is a total douche. And when Ferrari rallies her supporters and fails to inspire them, the Talking Frog offers the sage advice that people will follow even a silver spoon-fed, hopelessly unqualified, inexperienced, self-centered, infantile brat into a position of power as long as you pretend that you know what you're doing. Returning to the fight, Anime Girl and the stripper are halted by the Hulk, who tries to pull the Family Ties card to get the stripper to help him get the meth lab. Unfortunately for him, Totally Not Trump overhears this, and the four of them return to the Republicans' HQ. The stripper reveals that Wagner has the MacGuffin, and the Hulk is devastated because after becoming blood brothers with him, the Bro Code prevents the Hulk from harming Moodswing's dragon. Totally Not Trump then lives up to his name by doing something that requires a modicum of intelligence, putting the Hulk in a no-win situation and ultimately getting the stripper sentenced to death. Meanwhile in Hippieville, Ferrari confronts Totally Not Evil Cousin, who sicks Gothman on her. But Gothman loses, crawls back to the palace, and makes the shocking discovery that Totally Not Evil Cousin is actually totally evil. He then proceeds to call Gothman a total tool before turning into Phazon. Gothman is even more emo and doesn't even run when a debt collector comes to bring him to Spider-Woman's house. In another part of the hippie palace, Ferrari learns that the Talking Frog followed her and basically won her the war by using a special chemical to turn all of Evil Cousin's friggin' soldiers gay, and gives her another chemical to make them straight again. He then reveals that he's a really insecure guy and needs to become a man by getting to first base with a hippie, but Ferrari is still really shallow and doesn't want to kiss Insecure Frog just yet. Back in the Republican HQ, the Hulk is bummed because the stripper reminds him of his mistress, and seeing her die, even though he could easily save her if he really wants to, is a total buzzkill. Anime Girl takes some more LSD, and in her altered state of mind, believes that trekking up a freezing mountain to slaughter several soldiers merely following orders to kill one corrupt official, free a prisoner of war, be shunned by her own people, and kicked out of the only home she's ever known is totally worth it if it will make her deadbeat dad not sad. Atop Skyrim Mountain, Anime Girl frees the stripper and, confronting Totally Not Trump, learns that he lived up to his name again by having a plan. But Anime Girl kills Totally Not Trump before he can try to become president. Returning to the Republican HQ, the LSD she took earlier is still affecting her, but being so high, Anime Girl is prepared to face the horrific punishment that comes from treason, murdering a high-ranking official, all of the soldiers that accompanied him, and freeing a prisoner of war, taking a nap and falling in love. The Hulk is touched by Anime Girl's willingness to submit to such a fate and compliments her, and Anime Girl, relieved that she's finally experienced some form of positive reinforcement, gets roofied for the next zillion years. Deep in the hippie forest, Insecure Frog pesters Ferrari about getting to first base, but is cock-blocked by the arrival of the Dragon Wagner, who presumably didn't find out where Gothman came from until just now because his mood swings caused him to maim and kill everyone he tried to question regarding Gothman's whereabouts. Ferrari tries to tell Mood Swings Dragon that he's dead, but Mood Swings Dragon doesn't believe her, so he goes to Skyrim Mountain and says that if they don't bring Gothman, he'll pull an EA and destroy everything they love. Ferrari climbs Skyrim Mountain to tell Mood Swings Dragon that Gothman is dead because that worked out perfectly last time, and calms down Wagner by shooting him with lasers of understanding. Ferrari vows to beat the Hulk, but Insecure Frog tells her that she's way too underleveled for that. They then return to the Hippie Palace where Ferrari discusses how to beat the Hulk's engorged Spike Smurf testicle. With medieval Tony Stark having been sent to the Nether regions by Evil Cousin, they need a wise guy to take them there to rescue him. Insecure Frog tells Ferrari that he knows where to find the wise guys because one of them transformed him in the first place. The stripper, having successfully fled from Skyrim Mountain, returns to Furry Town. It turns out that Exposition Man is still bedridden, and the wise guy Scully is being a dick to a furry maid who tells the stripper that the Hulk has locked Anime Girl in a castle where the stripper decides to go. Unfortunately for Furry Lowenthal, he wakes up right after the stripper has already left. Deep in the Nether regions, Gothman has awoken and meets up with Tony Stark, who tells him that Gothman's parents are dead and that Tony now sees that ruining Gothman's life was a douche move. But Gothman just wants to be emo and wanders off. However, Gothman manages to find some of the fabled royal LSD like the kind used by Anime Girl and takes it, and through the power of intoxication finds the strength to keep marching forward. Returning to the stripper's exploits, she manages to meet up with the Hulk and tell him that he's a dick, but then Zombie Valentine shows up too and gives the old mafia-type threat that if she beats up the Hulk, maybe you won't have to go break some legs in Furry Town, forcing the stripper to relent and fight. But just when Zombie Valentine is set to kill the stripper's deadbeat dad, she stops him long enough for the Hulk to grab him by the everything. The Hulk wants him dead, but Zombie Valentine also wants to die too, which makes the Hulk want him to live so that he can't die. Zombie Valentine also drops a letter written by his daughter Ariel, and when the stripper reads it, it turns out to be a clarification that predicting someone's fate doesn't make you a douche canoe that wants said fate to befall you, and that she actually did care about the stripper and her brother Aladdin. With Zombie Valentine gone, the stripper is forced to accept that her dad is a dick and try some faith healing on Anime Girl, praying that her arranged husband won't also be a dick. Back in Furry Town, goblins are sent by Zombie Valentine to steal their money and break the legs of anyone that gets in their way as recompense for the stripper failing to let him kill the Hulk. Furry Lowenthal intervenes and follows them back to the 420 Blaze Kingdom where he meets Zombie Valentine, who reveals that he wasn't the prick that made his kingdom go explodey. His plan was to take the Objectives Kingdom's money back, but since the coins need to be given in order for them to actually count, he was going to bypass that caveat by melting him down so that the power would return to him. However, since Furry Lowenthal foiled those plans, he decides to hatch a dragon named Jormungandr. But since that name was too difficult to say consistently, called it Knockoff Leviathan instead, and gave it his crown containing the last of his superpowers. Furry Lowenthal beats Knockoff Leviathan, and Zombie Valentine tries to downplay his crown's performance issues as being the result of being around Spider-Woman's meth crystals when he was in the Nether regions. Zombie Valentine then reveals to him that Furry Lowenthal's meth sword was given to him by his dad's dead dog dad, and takes advantage of Furry Lowenthal's easily distracted nature to slink away so that he doesn't get killed for being a dick, while Furry Lowenthal proceeds to transport the currency of an entire goddamn nation, presumably stored in an anus so cavernous that a colorectal surgeon would lose his or herself in its labyrinthine passages, and returns to Furry Town. Furry Lowenthal then hears that his dad's being a dick in his hometown and decides to venture back. However, like many times before, the stripper arrives just after his departure and learns that blonde Yuri Lowenthal was turned into a furry by Aladdin and goes to Titania. Back in the Nether regions, Gothman finally makes his way to Spider-Woman, but finds out that since she controls the power that he has, stabbing her won't work. She then promises to give him his internal organs back if he goes and kills the Hulk because he just broke in and is trying to steal more meth crystals. The Hulk's about to die, but tries to appeal to Gothman by insinuating that killing the person responsible for nearly everything bad that's happened to the hippies isn't what the Queen would want for some reason. Then he makes actual sense by offering Gothman a way out. Taking him back to the Republican HQ, the Hulk offers Gothman real estate, but he's not the investing type. Then the Hulk offers him a meth spear, but Gothman doesn't like blue weapons. However, when the Hulk offers to pimp out Anime Girl, he listens. The Hulk tasks Gothman with killing the Mood Swings Dragon Wagner, but doesn't tell him why. Gothman accepts and ascends to the top of the mountain immediately because the power of Feather Bonus is super strong, and kills Mood Swings Dragon. Gothman retrieves the MacGuffin Wagner had been safeguarding and tells the Hulk that it's his now because of the ancient rule of Finders Keepers, forcing the Hulk to relent and pimp out Anime Girl for free. Gothman heads to Real Estate Castle and believes that the LSD he took in the Nether regions was guiding him to Anime Girl all along and proceeds to stare at her in the hopes that the power of Feather Bonus will be strong enough to wake her. Much to Gothman's dismay, he learns that there are some things that the power of boners can't overcome, and that while he could wake her up at any time, it turns out that the Hulk gave Anime Girl birth control pills that will make her want to bone the first guy she sees. But before Gothman can take the birth control away and make Anime Girl love her for more than just his boner, the wise guy Scully shows up, steals Anime Girl, and flees to Titania, prompting Gothman to rescue her. But before any of the other characters make it to Titania, the Hippie Queen is being led through the alleyways only for the soldiers to descend upon them and kidnap Hippie Santa. Meanwhile, in Titania's capital, the stripper managed to get there before Furry Lowenthal because her legs are longer and the changes to movement speed and gameplay for characters to greater differentiate them didn't happen until the Letherseer version. It turns out that the wise guy Urzer is pulling a Palpatine and basically running things because Ed won't give the wise guys the Book of Deus Ex Machinas, and if he divides them, they'll sick their Danger Noodle on the kingdom. They lure the stripper into the sewers with the Danger Noodle and capture her, then they monologue about their evil plans. It turns out that they raided Dead Dog Dad's nerd stash of prophecies and hid the last entry that claimed there would be survivors. So they decided to control the events of Armageddon so that they would be the ones to survive. During the fight, Urzer, somehow or another, finally gained access to the Book of Deus Ex Machinas, and King Ed tries to get it back. Furry Lowenthal, hearing this, confronts the wise guy and tells him that Dead Dog Dad is too sleepy to end the world, but Urzer believes that his work ethic would never allow for such a thing and teleports away, whereupon King Ed tells Furry Lowenthal that the stripper is in the sewers with the Danger Noodle. Down in another part of the sewers, the wise guy Doorbell has Hippie Santa. Ferrari tries to negotiate for his release, but Doorbell tries to stick the Danger Noodle on her instead. However, the Danger Noodle doesn't want to fight Ferrari because the last time he tried, she pulled a Dick Cheney by shooting him and just apologizing for it afterward. Doorbell doesn't like the Danger Noodle's attitude, so he takes matters into his own hands. Doorbell goes for a sneak attack, but Insecure Frog turns him into a furry and claims that he won't be able to use his magic in that form, even though Zombie Valentine has already done that multiple times now. Ferrari grants Insecure Frog's wish to go to first base with the hippie, only for her to learn that it was actually Aladdin all along, who immediately abandons her, but promises to call her sometime or something, leaving her to take the newly furrified Doorbell prisoner. Back in the other part of the sewers, Urzer is accosted by Furry Lowenthal, who through the power of cutscenes is now tired, but Aladdin shows up and confronts Urzer instead, demanding the Cerberus bear powers from the Book of Deus Ex Machinas. Urzer doesn't care, but when Aladdin tells him that the MacGuffin that he gave him was a fake, Urzer is left one key item short on his questline. Furry Lowenthal reveals to Aladdin that the stripper is being held prisoner, so Aladdin cures Furry Lowenthal of his cutscene fatigue and faces off against Urzer so that the player won't have to fight a wizard boss this early in the game. Furry Lowenthal reaches the Danger Noodle just before it makes its way over to the stripper, and the Danger Noodle proceeds to entreat him to kill him. Mortally wounding the Danger Noodle, Furry Lowenthal frees the stripper while the Danger Noodle exacts his revenge for bondage by eating Urzer. Gothman, hot on the wise guy Scully's trail, catches him in the sewers of Titania. Needing to explain the role of meth crystals in relation to Armageddon and not wanting to put it in a text document for the player, Scully channels the spirit of Exposition Man and proceeds to reveal that as long as the meth weapons absorb the pink phase-on released when something dies, it can't return to the earth from whence it came to fuel the growth of more life. Thus, the world is already dying, and even if they just wanted to chill and get their revenge on the Hulk for making them look like total asses, the end of the world is already on its way, and to ensure that the 420 Blaze King was close at hand to play his role, Scully used Anime Girl to lure him to the surface, and she's actually there right now. Scully pleads for his life, but Gothman kills him for going on an exposition tangent and breaking the flow of the story. Back out of the sewers, Furry Lowenthal meets with his dad. King Ed hopes to make him king so that he won't have to give his citizens the lame excuse of, a wizard made me do it. But Furry Lowenthal tells Ed that the people would never accept a furry as a ruler and leaves to tell the stripper his real identity, who tells him that she still loves him, no matter his fetishes. Far off in the 420 Blaze Kingdom, the Hulk punches until he reaches the king, Asura, who tells him that he's gonna get hitched with Anime Girl and live happily ever after. But the Hulk is like, yeah, okay, sure you will. And Asura's like, da fuck. Meanwhile, Aladdin goes to visit Spider-Woman in the Nether regions and asks if he can please use her army to attack the Republicans. Spider-Woman is worried about starting the Armageddon War, but goes along with it to stop the Hulk from breaking into her damn house. Aladdin then leaves to tell the stripper goodbye, who tries to chase after him but is foiled by tripping over at Dwayne Johnson. Ferrari then is guided to the Nether regions by the now helpless and sole-surviving wise guy Furry Doorbell, who runs into a debt collector when he tries to ditch Ferrari. She ends up reaching the medieval Tony Stark in the middle of working on meth crystals for Spider-Woman. The two try to leave, but Spider-Woman stops them. Meanwhile, the stripper manages to catch up with Aladdin and pleads with him not to turn into a Cerberus bear, but Aladdin is ready to die, so he tells the stripper the truth, that he was the one who destroyed the kingdom of objectivists, inadvertently saving the Republican army and the Hulk by setting the meth lab to its fuck shit up setting. But when he saw that the Hulk only cared about the meth lab, he gave the MacGuffin to the Hippie Queen so that she could take it first. Aladdin wants both the Hulk and the meth lab gone and successfully turns into a Cerberus bear, having pried the info from Urzer before being eaten by the Danger Noodle. At the same time, Ferrari is fighting off the Spider-Woman when debt collectors arrive. Spider-Woman is about to strike with her forces, but Aladdin's transformation makes Dead Dog Dad throw a tantrum, forcing Spider-Woman and her soldiers to leave and restrain him, allowing Ferrari and Tony to escape. After the fight, the Cerberus bear transforms back into Aladdin, and the stripper calls him an idiot for thinking that their mom wanted them dead just because she made the prophecy. They're soon surrounded by Republicans, but Furry Lowenthal uses furry magic to teleport them out. Following this, the Hulk, vulnerable following his encounter with the Cerberus bear, becomes possessed by the spirit of Totally Not Trump and begins ordering around the Republicans. Returning to the Hippie Kingdom, Ferrari asks medieval Tony Stark to make a weapon to help combat the Hulk's giant spiked Smurf testicle. Tony is hesitant, but when Ferrari tells him to suck it up and try something other than selling his soul, he agrees. In the depths of the 420 Blaze Kingdom, Gothman is accosted by King Asura, who tells him that he hates people with poor hygiene and turns into the Lava Golem from Yu-Gi-Oh! But Asura activates Gothman's trap card, who starts taking Anime Girl away before listening to Asura's first world problems. It turns out that, like a lot of things the Republicans believe, there's no scientific evidence that birth control will turn Anime Girl into a massive whore for the first guy she sees, and that as powerful as Asura's boner is, it's not enough to make Anime Girl love him if he woke her up. Gothman, sympathizing with Asura's issues of self-confidence, promises to do him a solid by doing some killing if he asks. Ferrari sees Totally Not Trump making the Hulk do weird things, but is worried that it's just the Hulk luring her into a trap and decides not to attack. Whereupon Stark comes to tell her that because they don't have control over the cauldron anymore, they can't make any more meth weapons and need the 420 Blaze fire. The two reach the fire, but Zombie Valentine is there to greet them too. Tony learns that Gothman is still alive, but Zombie Valentine sees the fire and puts two and two together. And like any good objectivist, doesn't take kindly to former employees divulging trademark secrets, so he 6-knock-off Leviathan on them, whereupon Ferrari shoots the baby and bails. After returning home, Ferrari starts competently commanding the hippies, and Tony makes a new gun that looks suspiciously like the old one but has new cutscene powers. He then holds the gun hostage while he negotiates his job's vacation time so that he can see Gothman while Ferrari prepares for war. Reuniting at Furry Town, the stripper learns that Aladdin is missing and Exposition Man is gone as well. Finding him like 5 feet away, Exposition Man then tells the stripper that after looking over the prophecies, he's concluded that everybody's going to die except 2 people, then dies. Back in the real estate castle, Gothman wakes up Anime Girl, who is given the MacGuffin that he got from Wagner. Taken aback by his politeness, Anime Girl finds that the LSD from earlier is still affecting her, and she tells the Ghost Bird that she still has daddy issues. Gothman goes to leave, but when Anime Girl tries for some submissive roleplay, Gothman tells her that he's not into kinky shit like that and storms off. During the bonus scene, on the way to his destination, all 5 playable characters cross paths in Titania with the author of the books. Gothman is on his way to the 420 Blaze Kingdom to fight on Asura's behalf. Ferrari presumably had to submit an order / pick up supplies for the coming battle, with the location of the Objectives Kingdom's coins possibly being why the stripper and Furry Lowenthal were there, and Anime Girl traveling to the Republican HQ to return the MacGuffin, with the only mystery being what the author traded with the vendor to get the commemorative coin that he put on the cover of one of the books. Anime Girl travels to the Republicans and is shocked when the person who killed a military official, dozens of soldiers, defied the king's orders, freed a POW, and was banished from the kingdom doesn't have the red carpet rolled out for her. Killing even more soldiers at the mercy of a regime with ever-shifting priorities, Anime Girl reaches the Hulk only to discover that the spirit of Totally Not Trump is controlling him. Since Spider-Woman had an opening to attack through Aladdin anyway, she decided to send the spirit of Totally Not Trump to possess the Hulk so that he would stop breaking into her house to steal her meth, as well as provide no reason for her armies to fight the Republicans in the future, thus staving off the end of the world. Unfortunately, Anime Girl performs an exorcism by stabbing her father with her meth spear until Totally Not Trump leaves. Since performing a royal exorcism gives you a pass, Anime Girl is allowed back in the Republican Party, and she proceeds to give the Hulk the MacGuffin. But Anime Girl finds it super romantic that Gothman fought a dragon so that the Hulk would pimp her out to him, so she leaves to live with Gothman instead. Anime Girl is worried about Gothman, and after asking medieval Tony Stark where he went, goes to the 420 Blaze Kingdom. There she speaks with Asura, who tells her that knockoff Leviathan is giving his people serious shit, so he called Gothman over to kill it, but he hasn't heard from him since. Asura offers to save Gothman if Anime Girl will be his waifu. But Anime Girl ascribes to the "if you like it then you should have put a MacGuffin on it" school of thought and runs off to save Gothman. Asura tells the Lava Girls to chase after her without hurting her, but they apparently have really bad hearing. Gothman fights knockoff Leviathan, but Spider-Woman decided to take away Gothman's powers for leaving just now rather than at any point in the past for some reason. Anime Girl arrives just in time to save him and manages to best the infant. She goes to carry Gothman out when Asura reveals that Gothman is doomed to be taken by Spider-Woman's debt collectors to the nether regions. Anime Girl yells at Asura for rudely blocking the door, and the two make their way home. Meanwhile, Ferrari has gathered all her troops in the Hippie Kingdom to launch an attack on the Republicans. She feigns confidence, and while the battle does go their way, Ferrari is petrified when facing off against the Hulk in his giant spike Smurf testicle. However, when the Hulk mentions her mom in an unflattering way, she's like, "Oh no, you didn't!" and fights back. Using her gun's newfound cutscene powers, Ferrari manages to successfully bust the Hulk's ball and win the battle. At which point she tells the Hulk to f*** off and leave the MacGuffin or die. He chooses the former option and asks what her name is so that he can put it on his personal shit list. At this time, Anime Girl returns and asks medieval Tony Stark about Gothman while he rests. But Gothman likes to speak for himself, so he tells her about the contract with Spider-Woman. Gothman then thanks Anime Girl for rescuing him and, suspecting her use of LSD, asks if she went to the 420 Blaze Kingdom to get high. Anime Girl tells him that she was really worried about him, but becomes flustered because he noticed her drug addiction. Anime Girl is initially relieved when the arrival of a Valkyrie derails the potential for the conversation to shift towards potentially going to rehab, but is worried when she learns that the Republicans were beaten by the hippies and her dad got roughed up. However, the news that the MacGuffin Gothman gave to Anime Girl was given away devastates Gothman, who walks off. Anime Girl, determined to set things right, takes some LSD and politely asks Ferrari for the MacGuffin back after slaughtering dozens of her soldiers. Ferrari, understandably disinclined to acquiesce to her request, tries to shoot her instead. Yet despite having brought a meth spear to a meth gunfight, Anime Girl manages to get the MacGuffin and makes her way back home. Meanwhile, Gothman is busy moping when a debt collector comes up behind him. Resigning himself to his fate, the debt collector takes Gothman's soul and wounds medieval Tony Stark. The furry maid flees and tells Anime Girl, who returns to the Hulk. The Hulk wants the MacGuffin, but Anime Girl has come to bargain, and he agrees to help her reach Spider-Woman's nether regions. Anime Girl begins by asking Spider-Woman politely, but when she doesn't get Gothman back, kills Spider-Woman instead, who reveals that she was the only reason that anyone was able to penetrate the nether regions, and that when she dies, there'll be no way back. The Hulk whisks them to safety and demands the MacGuffin back like he was promised. Since now that he can't steal Spider-Woman's meth crystals, the meth lab is now the only way to make a replacement Smurf testicle. But Anime Girl tries to pull the possession is 9/10 of the law with Hulk, who gives in and lets her go back home with the MacGuffin. At which point, Gothman and Anime Girl hug while the LSD from earlier begins to finally wear off.
I'm a goddamn motherfucking cat.
Aladdin is still feeling weird after having turned into a three-headed dog with bare fists, but makes his way over to the meth lab to destroy it. With MacGuffin having traded hands so many times, the meth lab's power went back on at some point, and Zombie Valentine brings knockoff Leviathan to its core, using voice recognition software to command the lab to absorb Phazon and blow up the world. Aladdin then tries to transform again and tear apart the meth lab. Meanwhile, in the nether regions, the use of the Cerberus Bear power corrupts Dead Dog Dad, who demands that everyone leave and go wreck his former home. And much like Zombie Valentine, the furry conversion that Doorbell underwent let his body survive in the nether regions. Zombie Doorbell then tells Dead Dog Dad that the debt collectors can get everyone out into the land of the living if he just tells them to. Without Phazon to keep the world together, the land starts sinking into the waters, starting with Asura's 420 Blaze Kingdom. Deciding to disregard the prophecies mentioning that they'd be screwed once they got to the World Tree, even though he mentions the prophecy himself like 20 seconds earlier, Asura orders everyone to march out onto the world and burn everything. Back with the Republicans, creatures from the nether regions make their way to the Hulk, who puts up a good fight, but ultimately can't stem the tide without his giant spike Smurf testicle. So he decides to go out on a literal high note and take some LSD before dying. Anime Girl, following in her father's footsteps, takes some LSD during the stressful situation and flies off. Arriving before Aladdin could tear apart the meth lab, Zombie Doorbell stopped him and made him tear apart other things instead. Crossing paths with Furry Lowenthal, Doorbell sics Cerberus Bear Aladdin on him, but Furry Lowenthal manages to survive the encounter and force him back into Aladdin. Aladdin then tells the stripper that she should use the meth lab to help save the world, and like a true Japanese media character, turns his thoughts to an underage girl. Gothman confronts Dead Dog Dad in Titania, who tells him that he can only die at the hands of royalty. Gothman proceeds to stab him, and Dead Dog Dad asks, "Who's your daddy?" Whereupon Gothman learns that his dad was a prince, and Dead Dog Dad is his dying dog granddad, who proceeds to lament not telling the assassins that he sent after Edgar to be more thorough. Ferrari tries to protect the hippie force against the 420 Blaze Kingdom's troops, and laments Aladdin's death before turning her attention to the Lava Golem, both of whom get their asses handed to one another, with the Lava Golem failing to understand until Ferrari reveals that her Norse mythology name was the one that was in the prophecies, and that no one could have known, especially since the prophecies mention a throne, but literally every goddamn playable character is royalty. The stripper makes her way to the meth lab and tears apart the weapons and defenses, while Zombie Valentine stands off in the distance, impotently stomping his feet, shaking his bony fists, and grinding his zombie furry teeth. After which, his wrath turns to the stripper, but unlike the countless times he whipped her in the past, is racked with the memory of his daughter Ariel, and instead makes it so that anyone who tries to use the meth lab will be cursed. Zombie Valentine then summons knockoff Leviathan and shoots off into the heavens.
High in the sky and high on drugs,
Anime Girl flies up to combat knockoff Leviathan as one of its blasts incinerates Zombie Valentine. She takes away its jewelry, which unlike all the other times that a meth weapon was plunged into its infant form or the crown was knocked off, or both, is enough to kill it now for some reason. But the blast ruins Anime Girl's wings, and she proceeds to plummet back down, still stoned out of her mind. It's then that the ghost bird turns into Anime Girl's dead sister, and true to Japanese media, makes it so that she talks to her in a way where Anime Girl can't not look up her skirt.
Epilogue.
Gothman uses his powers to jump up and catch Anime Girl before she hits the ground, but collapses trying to reach the stripper and Furry Lowenthal. The stripper finds the MacGuffin and uses the meth lab to turn the group's meth weapons back into Phazon to bring the planet back to life. Whereupon the meth lab's curse turns the stripper into a furry. With the prophecy fulfilled, but the two fabled crownless lords remaining, the world becomes full of life, and Gothman and Anime Girl begin the process of repopulating the Earth, and their family lived incestuously ever after. In the present day, a girl named Alice is reading books because video games still haven't been invented yet. There's also vermin that she keeps as a pet despite the fact that it constantly gets in the way while she's trying to pick up books, is virtually untrainable, stuck up as hell, scratches her furniture, sheds everywhere, has piss that smells like hell, basically never shows affection unless you're there to feed it, and is a carrier of brain parasites. But also lets her watch story cutscenes, so I guess she thinks the trade-off is worth it. Alice is bummed out about the ending and takes one of the coins of the Ejectives Kingdom off the cover of one of the books, offering it to the furries in gratitude for their story before leaving the attic, whereupon Furry Lowenthal and the stripper in furry form teleport in to take the coin and leave the real ending for Alice to find later. Retreating to a secluded cave, Furry Lowenthal and the stripper haven't gone insane for boredom, and after gathering all the coins debate breaking the furry curse. Furry Lowenthal thinks that staying as immortal furries and getting to have sex forever might not be a bad idea and just never thought to mention it until now. But the stripper furry says that the world is just as shitty now as it was back then and feeds him some bullshit about the sun's rising again, blah blah blah, but is clearly just as suicidal as her grandfather and just wants to die. So they finally turn back into blonde Yuri Lowenthal and the stripper so that they can inject some desperately needed genetic diversity into the gene pool. Even though said genetic diversity wouldn't be nearly enough, it's only a matter of time before that one tree gets bulldozed and someone finds the meth gun with the power to drain Phazon from the world and everything goes to shit again. The end. And it ended up taking him a week before he founded it. Anime girl flies up to combat. Ugh. The stripper briefly. And anime girl, relieved that she's finally experienced some form of positive reinforcement, gets rupeed. Damn! Rupeed? Really? Rupeed. Ferrari climbs Skyrim Mountain to tell Mood Swings Dragon that Gothman is dead because that worked out perfectly last time. And Calm's gone. Yes, Galm HD is in the game. Furry Lowenthal reveals to Aladdin that the stripper is being held prisoner, so Aladdin cures Fury Lowenthal of his cutscene fatigue. And back out of the sewers, Furry Lowenthal meets with his dad. King Ed hopes to make him kink so that he won't have to... Did I say hopes to make him kink? Who runs into a debt collector when he tries to ditch Furry. Since performing a royal exorcism... With the MacGuffin having traded hands so many times, the meth lab's power went back on it. Went big. And after having gathered all the coins, debate breaking the fairy curse, damn it. And after gathering all the coins, debate breaking the I said fairy curse again. And after gathering all the coins, debate baking. Retreating to a secluded cave, Furry Lowenthal and the stripper furry haven't gone insane for boredom, and after gathering all the coins, debate breaking the fairy curse again! Anime girl, determined to set things right, takes some LSD and politely asks Ferrari to give She decided to send the spirit of totally not Trump to
It was at this moment he knew. He fucked up.
Gotcha, bitch.